Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another new entry here. This one yet again based on one of your new suggestions. This one having to do with a cryptid that is a pretty old one when it comes to the timeline here in the United States. I actually almost debated putting this into a mixtape because the information on it is there, but it's kind of brief. But at the end, I thought it has enough info to at least merit posting it into its own individual video. But yes, otherwise I'll try to present as much information as possible. Definitely has to do with a bizarre looking cryptid. You'll know that more here in a minute. But ultimately, it may have links to some of the more modern, well-known cryptids here in the United States. In fact, you're looking at a representation of it now. It has a very unique name as well, and it's known as Old Sheff. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that information here. I'll give my own thoughts and opinions. And those of you that are in the Kansas area, you'll know more in a minute. Let me know what your comments are too. So here's all the info associated with Old Sheff. So who was or is Old Sheff? Well, you have to go back to the very first sighting, which occurred back in August 1869. Remember I was mentioning it's a little whiles back, right? When it comes to the timeline here in the United States. And you have to go there to Kansas, specifically to an area called Crawford County, Kansas. So again, those of you in the Kansas area, if you're in the Crawford County area, let me know if you have anything as far as any local experience of the tales associated with this old cryptid. But as far as Old Sheff and the characteristics associated with it, here it is. Essentially, it looked like what could be its own version of a North American ape. So in other words, it had these long arms, just like an ape. It had large hands as well. But it was seen walking bipedally, and then it also utilized both its back legs and its long arms to walk with as well. In fact, it was basically, think of it like your average ape, but it just happens to be here in the United States. But one different trait made it completely separate from everything else. People that looked at it actually started to turn away and didn't shoot at it for this. It looked too human. So imagine, in other words, something involving an ape, but here in North America, but almost like a missing link between apes and humans. Like it looked so human that people just didn't want to do anything harmful to it. And then as far as other characteristics associated with it, it had again those long arms that attributed it to having a stooping gait. And then sometimes it would also walk on all fours as well. Now, this creature was kind of peaceful in this sense. It was more curious. That was the interpretation I got from it whenever I was walking around that Crawford County area. As it turns out, there was a location there where people were basically living at the areas there. There were a form of cabins and a form of settlers within them. And then the men would go out to work during the day, and that would leave the women and children during that time period by themselves. And this thing is apparently intelligent enough to realize this might have been a good time to be able to go down into that valley area and then make its inspections. It would do so, but it would cause obviously great alarm to many of the women and children there because of what this thing was and what it was doing, just basically walking around that location. The closest that I got to it being like in terms of a harmful creature was that it would quote unquote terrorize some of the farmers there in the sense that it would pull down fences. Maybe it was doing it to go from point A to point B and just didn't want to have something in its way, or maybe it was doing it as a defensive mode. Maybe people were again coming too close to it and it decided to do this action to try to scare people away. But there doesn't seem to be any indication of it actually causing like true terror to the surrounding people, other than the fact that they in turn were terrorized by its sudden appearance and by its looks and so on. In fact, it was also described more along the lines between a bridge of a wild man and then also a gorilla. The only other instance that it could have had something involving harm to other people involved a house, one involving older citizens, senior citizens, but these senior citizens decided to fight back and they used some of the clubs that they had, and then that essentially caused it to go away. Again, giving you the idea that it was more along the lines of just curious in terms of inspecting things and so on. But otherwise, when there was the chance to actually shoot at it, I'm guessing that at this point there were people that were going actively on a hunt to try to find this creature and then see what could happen, maybe end it once and for all. They couldn't do it. People were unwilling to shoot at it because once they saw it, they must have seen that it looked so human that to them it would have just been as if shooting another person, and they just weren't about to do that in that time period. Again, this is a creature that resembled man in many ways in terms of a human form, and that's what gave it great pause when it comes to the people that came across that location, or at least its location as well. But just as mysteriously as it appeared, in fact, sometimes several times during that time period of August 1869, it disappeared. There was no other news associated with it afterward. No indication as to where it went. Some people theorize, though, that it may have been seen in some of the other areas, the adjoining counties of Missouri. But otherwise, once it started there in that Kansas location, and then it just left 100%, never came back. Nobody ever saw it afterward. And considering the timeline of it being 1869, up until now at least, you get a good indication that, wow, it's been that long and nobody has still seen any resemblance associated to it. But that gives you an idea of almost like as a one-off when it comes to this creature, this old Sheff, essentially what type of impact it made to this day, 150 plus years that people are still talking about it. And still, nobody has any indication as to its whereabouts or what happened to it. Unless it's a creature that lives for a very, very long time, there's a good chance that it's essentially gone at this point. Or who knows, there may be just a family of these things, of these old Sheffs out there, but they're able to evade captivity. They're able to evade also being seen just because they're adapted so well to that location there in Crawford County, Kansas, or other locations. But that's pretty much it. So if anyone has any more info, anything else I might have missed, please post those comments below. Again, those of you in that Kansas area, if you know any more of the local stories, legends associated with this cryptid, post those comments below. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.